We head to the Middle East, where Houthi rebels in Yemen are claiming responsibility for a drone strike in the heart of Tel Aviv. One person was killed and 10 wounded when it crashed into a building near the U.S. Embassy. Israeli military spokesman Daniel Hagari says the drone was made in Iran, which supports the Houthis and other groups targeting Israel.
Simhat 3 is an Iranian weapon that was modified to increase its range. Iran supports, funds, and arms its proxies in regions like Gaza, Judea and Samaria, Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen.
The U.S. military says it intercepted 4 of the drones launched from Yemen, but it appears that a 5th slipped through to hit Tel Aviv. Israel says the drone was spotted but wasn't tracked properly due to human error. Our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief, Chris Mitchell, is with us now from Jerusalem. Chris, what did Israel's defense minister say after this drone strike today?
Well, Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, said that Israel will settle the score with all who attack it. He said they're also working on strengthening their defense systems. He met with the IDF chief of staff and other heads of security. And as you said, just before we started talking, apparently it was a human error that allowed the drone to escape detections, and also very close to the U.S. consulate in Tel Aviv, possibly the real target. And this is also the first time in a while that Tel Aviv's been struck directly. Been hundreds of missiles, thousands actually, up on the north and some in the south. But this is the first time in a while that central Israel has been hit.
Is this another indication of Iran using its proxy groups to attack Israel?
Yeah, definitely, George. I mean, they're the head of the snake. They're the, as some people say, the octopus with its arms all over the region and pulling the strings. You have the Houthis in Yemen. They're attacking sea traffic as well as not only Tel Aviv, but Eilat, which is the southern part of Israel, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria that just a few days ago attacked a U.S. base. So the drones came out of Yemen, but Tehran is really the main address. That's the head of the snake, as I said. And even as Hagari said, this was a Iranian-made drone and modified to have extra distance. So the real Nefesh is the problem in the Middle East is Iran. That's what many Israeli officials have been saying for many years.
Yeah. Chris, let's turn to the hostage crisis. Do you have a sense that President Trump has given a boost to the families of the hostages?
Totally, George. In his speech, he said that we want our hostages back, and they better be back before I assume office, or you'll be paying a very heavy price. And for the hostage families is, George, a huge boost to those families that somebody would speak up, and not only speak up, but actually threaten Hamas and those that are holding these hostages. Some here in Israel believe there really hasn't been enough of a threat to Hamas, or actually its main sponsor, Qatar, to put more pressure to release the hostages. For example, some have told us that if the U.S. had threatened to pull out of the huge military base in Qatar, it would have made a big difference. It would have put pressure on Qatar to put pressure on Hamas, which is one of their proxies. And the Hamas terrorists, since October 7th, they killed 26 Americans, and they kidnapped 8 on October 7th. We believe 5 are still alive. And one family of an American hostage also spoke at the Republican National Convention. So just a huge boost that he would make an effort to single out and make a threat. Mm-hmm. Some people said it's almost similar to what President Reagan did before he took office. That's when so many hundreds of U.S. embassy officials were held captive by Iran and the Islamic regime. And he made a threat. Reagan did at that time, and they were released just at the inauguration. So I think we're seeing that kind of big stick by former President Trump that worked with President Reagan.
Yeah. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be flying to Washington for his speech to Congress next week. 2 questions. What did he say after the attempt on President Trump's life? And what kind of reception do you think he's going to get with a Biden administration that seems to really be in trouble these days?
Well, right now, what he said after that, he was horrified and sent his condolences and thanks that President Trump's life was spared. He also said the next day at his cabinet meeting that he showed a 2-hour video compilation of all the threats against him and other Israeli officials. That's why I've been hearing intercessors around the world are praying for President Trump, as well as other leaders like Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Biden. 2 Timothy 2 says all believers should pray for leaders and all those in authority. And some here in Israel, I've been hearing, are praying especially for protection over Netanyahu as he travels back and forth to Washington. And to your question, George, when he gets there, I think he's going to come to a different White House in the last month or so with the decline of President Biden and this mess that you were just talking about with David Brody about the Democrats in disarray. So it's going to be an interesting meeting with President Biden and Netanyahu, and there with other officials at the White House and likely State Department.
Yeah. Last question. What do you have for us on your new edition of Jerusalem Dateline today?
Well, we have some highlights from the RNC that really focused on Israel. We have a story of a unique and a very highly successful treatment of PTSD that was developed by Regent University, and it's working here in Israel. We also have a story about a prayer meeting, George, at the Western Wall, giving thanks to the miracle of former President Trump's life being spared. And one of the things that we interviewed one of those men at the Western Wall, and he said, of the Jews, miracles are a family business.
Okay, my handsome friend Chris Mitchell from Jerusalem, you do not want to miss this week's edition of Jerusalem Dateline. As always, thank you so much for your insights, and stay safe, and know that many people here in the U.S. and around the world are continuing to pray for your staff there in Israel. You can see the latest Jerusalem Dateline tonight on the CBN News Channel at 8 Eastern. You can also watch on the CBN News app or on YouTube.